everyone. A big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, Season 7, Episode 5. The year is flying by. I promise you a fantastic guest, and today is no exception. Before we go into today, actually, can I just thank you for the engagement we had last week for Danielle Webb, where we were talking about dwarfism and Dwarfism Awareness Month. Amazing response to that, and it's certainly something that doesn't seem to be covered very much. So really pleased we could shine a light on that. And today we have another amazing guest in the shape of Tamsin Caine. How are you?
I don't know what to say.
And you've battled through flu to be here, because we've been trying to do this for about 3 years now. So we're here. We did it. We're here. Fading any electricity cuts or anything. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. I've so much look forward to doing this. The only downside of us doing this on Zoom is that I can't get a big hug from you, which I always look forward to.
Virtual one.
Amazing. So I'm Tamsin Caine. I am a chartered financial planner. Please excuse the slightly dodgy voice, but I have got a bit of a cold. You
never know.
I specialize in working with people going through divorce. We set up the business, that part of the business, in 2018, which seems like yesterday, but it's really not. And it was set up to help people to try and get some form of amicable divorce. It's taken me in a whole load of directions that I could never have possibly imagined, including working with a lot of people who are in abusive relationships, which has its own challenges
Absolutely.
Certainly for me as a professional working with those people. And I'm based in South Manchester. I can't remember if I was supposed to tell you that.
Yeah, but please feel like you're on the chase or something. That's who you are, where you're Yeah.
All right. I'm on the chase. I'm also a massive rugby fan, and I'm absolutely gobsmacked that England are the only Northern Hemisphere team to get into the semi-finals of the World Cup.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know anything about rugby, you'll be like, I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah, I look like I should be into rugby, but I'm really not, actually. But it's good to hear this. This is good news, though. So this is good for me. Good breaking news for me. I mean, we'll get into kind of more of the details of kind of what you do now and kind of those challenges. And one of the real upsides of kind of the pandemic and lockdown actually is our paths crossed, which is a really good thing. And then also we got to meet in my first in-person event after lockdown, where I felt massively overwhelmed on that kind of Illuminate Live tour for Nucleus. And it's but yeah, it was a real kind of a real highlight for me to start to meet people that and obviously yourself included, who I'd only ever met virtually. And our paths have crossed many times since, which is really cool. So, okay, I guess we've kind of touched on who you are right now. Tell us about baby Tamsin. Tell us about kind of growing up. Tell us about education and family life and how it all first began in life.
Oh, wow. So I was born in Stoke-on-Trent. I have a little sister. She's not that little. She's still shorter than me, but anyway, she's about 18 months younger than me, and she lives just up the road now, which is pretty cool. We moved from Staffordshire to Cheshire when I was very little. Don't really remember anything about living in Staffordshire. Moved to Cheshire, left there just after my first year at primary school, moved to Derbyshire. So for me, Derbyshire's home. So if you want to ask me where I'm from, I'm going to tell you Derbyshire. I'm going to skip all the other. So that's led to me having a love for the hills, a love for the outdoors, a love for being in the middle of nowhere, preferably with no people around. So lots of times, lots of time spent in the hills when I was a kid. Reasonably happy childhood. Lived in a nice house on a nice estate in a town called Ripley, which is not the most salubrious place you'll ever go to, but I liked it. It's still home to me. Every time I go back, I'm still like, oh yeah, it's still home. My kids are like, oh my word, where are you bringing us? But that's all fine. Yeah, parents split up when I was 11, 12, something like that. Massive, like, grenade thrown into my fairly perfect middle class life. And kind of Ripley's not the place for anything slightly, I was going to say, weird going on. And divorced parents is not weird anymore. You know, loads of people have divorced parents, but just wasn't a thing in the town I was brought up in. If I tell you that Ripley was in the newspaper a couple of years ago was the most English town in Britain, that'll give you an indication of what the place is like. You know, there were very few ethnic minorities, my friends who've since come out as gay, and actually my sister as well. I hope she won't mind me saying that. You know, they didn't come out when they were at home because it just wouldn't have, it just wasn't the place. It's not a terribly accepting place. And so yeah, having divorced parents kind of was a bit tricky. It was a bit tricky to navigate. It was something that was wholly unexpected. It was very much out of the blue. As I say, it very much shattered my perfect middle class life. We moved house because couldn't sadly manage to stay in the place we were at. Still moved to a really lovely house in a village not very far away. You know, things were pretty reasonable when I was a kid. I was bullied a bit. I think, do you know what? I think most people kind of go through that. Wasn't great. My parents looked at moving me out of the school that I was in into a different school, but I'm not sure that would have solved it. I think sometimes you just got to get through it. You've got to, you grow a lot going through things, don't you? You know, it's not great at the time, but I think you grow a lot.
You do.
Yeah, got out of school with some not as good grades as I would have hoped for. This is interesting, actually. It's probably a point to bring in something that I listened to you talk, as you know, not very long ago, at a seminar that I was at. And I had this massive light bulb moment that I haven't really told you about. I just kind of messaged you and went, I had this massive light bulb moment, but didn't actually tell you what it was. So you were talking about your relationship with food and how that came from your relationship with your granddad.
Yeah.
Oh my word. So I was like, flipping heck, that, like, my whole life's just been explained by you saying that. So I have real perfectionist tendencies, and it's caused me huge problems throughout my life. I'm a September birthday. There is reason for me telling you this, not because I want a card. My birthday is 2 days before my grand's birthday. She's sadly no longer with us, but all through my childhood, she used to talk about us both being Virgos and therefore both being perfectionists. And her thing was always about what a brilliant thing it was, how fantastic it was to be a perfectionist. And she was really proud of it and really pleased that she was and that we both were, and we both fitted into this category. And you're telling me, talking about your relationship with food relating to your granddad. I was like, well, that's everything. That's exactly why I operate how I do with my perfectionism, which, you know, it can be a good thing, but sometimes there's times to go, do you know what? That's good enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, life school was not great. Great.
By the way, before we move on, thank you for that.
Yeah. That's all right.
What I love about why I don't script and why we don't have an agenda and we just have these comments, because it kind of turns into a little bit of therapy for both of us, which I quite like.
Amazing.
It's nice to be able to air things, isn't it, and kind of think things through as you're talking through. So when do we ever stop and think back? I mean, we don't, do we? In the busyness of life, so
not at all. Yeah, Do you know, it's interesting. I always say that if I go to a seminar and I pick one thing up, then it's been valuable use of my time, because you're not always going to learn loads of stuff. And actually that day I did. I learned quite a lot from other presenters as well. But
Yeah.
and I kind of was like, oh, you know, if I love Nick, I've seen him speak a few times, I love listening to him, maybe it'll be the same that I've heard before. And it properly wasn't. And I was just like, I'm so glad it came, because that's kind of fitted lots of jigsaw pieces together for me. And it was yeah, it was
Cool.
really
I think there's
useful.
something in that, though. I was having a talk about this with, I was at a conference, the PA show in London this week, and I was talking to one of my other speakers. I was speaking just after, a guy called Andy Workman, and we were saying this actually, that our stories that we share, we've been sharing pretty much the same kind of story for a long time, but actually it's not about what we deliver, it's about the receiver, it's about where the receiver is at that point. So if I mention something about professional life and there's something going on in your professional life, that'll resonate with you, whereas usually that wouldn't resonate. And I think so actually there's something to be said for that. I think it's very much in the ears of the receiver in that sense.
It's so interesting, that, isn't it? I'm going to take us on a rabbit hole, I suspect, but
we're good with rabbit holes on here. We love rabbit holes. Carry on. I've got something here saying about down the rabbit hole, just down there.
I'm famous for this. It's that thing about you, even though we're experiencing the same thing at the same time, we're going to experience it differently. And I think that blows my mind. I think that's absolutely fascinating, because you know, you and me are having the same conversation, albeit from different sides of it, but we're going to hear different things, we're going to feel different ways about it, and if we relayed this to somebody else, we're going to pick up on different bits of it. That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. And the fact that this goes out to a very diverse audience, given the work they do in prison, schools, and all the way, not just businesses, that how this is being received as a joint conversation is going to land thousands of different ways as well.
Yeah.
I think there is something in that. It sounds like something from Matrix when I said at the talk that your experience of life is not the truth. It's like, boom. It's a truth, it's your truth, but it's not the truth. And I think that's quite liberating, actually. I think, especially if you're struggling a little bit, that there is no right way, there is no the truth. Actually, it's about kind of the receiver, as I said.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it is about where you are at the time and how you're feeling. And you know, somebody can say something to you one day and you'll receive it in one way, and they'll say it exactly the same in exactly the same way 3 weeks later, and you'll respond differently to it.
Yeah.
And that's hard to get your head around.
It is,
because it does mean you've got to think carefully about how you communication lies. And I've said for a long time that written communication is really difficult, because you can say something in written communication and you'll know how you're intonating it, you'll know whether you're smiling when you're writing it, you'll know how you're intending it to be received, but the receiver will receive it how they're feeling at that time on that day.
Yeah.
And that's hard, isn't it?
Very, very, very difficult. Yeah, I mean, it's a good rabbit hole to dive down, actually. I was working at a school. When was this? Yesterday? I've lost track of the week, to be honest. I think it was yesterday. I was working at a school in Bath, at Prior Park College. Shout out to all the new connections here. And we were talking about this kind of the process of writing on paper as opposed to the process of writing onto a screen. And it's kind of, and this is an interesting one, because my last employed role in a big way was head of partnerships for a software company, and that software company was electronic signatures. And the bit that I would focus on actually is the human element of, actually, I still prefer paper books. I still prefer writing on paper, because actually I've been conditioned to think that that's safer than on screen. But I think there's a therapeutic process of putting things onto paper as well. And that's quite difficult for the same reason. You can't always convey the same emotions in words.
Sure. Do you know what? This is my paper book. And I was having this conversation with my colleague yesterday, because I was like, we'd had a meeting. He'd asked me to formulate some answers to some questions before we met, so that we had a something to work from. And I was like, right, I've answered all the, I've thought about the questions, I've written some notes down. And he said, would you just want me to send you that? Do you just want to send me the notes? And I'm like, no, because they're in writing. I've written them. And he's like, why have you written them? I'm like, because there is something scientific about when you're thinking about your feelings and emotions about something, about putting that onto paper. And that's the thing about journaling, isn't it?
Yeah.
If there's a whole load of mess going on in your head,
yeah,
actually getting it out of your head and onto paper. We're going through some massive changes in our business at the moment, and it all to do with systems and processes. Quite dull. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's been a question of, I came in on Monday morning and my entire world had turned on its head. And as somebody who suffers from anxiety already, that, like, I was just like, everything's gone wrong. My whole world's gone pear-shaped. I don't know what I'm doing any longer. And I've written so much this week. I've written questions down, and then I've kind of like stepped away from them and then gone back to them, gone, no, I don't need an answer to that question. No, I don't need an answer to that question. And I've actually gone back to them and only asked the questions that it's essential for me to ask.
Yeah.
Rather than, and interestingly, my colleague left me alone until yesterday.
Okay.
And then arranged this call. And I was like,
so they knew your process, essentially.
That was really good. We've worked together for a long time, but it was like, that was a good idea, because if you'd have spoken to me on Monday, my brain was exploding and you were the worst person in the world, and you really wouldn't have wanted to speak to me.
They literally would have been destroyed in the fallout.
Yeah, absolutely. But leaving me alone for 4 days and letting me crack on with it, just letting me get used to the whole thing, we were able to have a sensible, positive conversation about the good things that were happening as a result of it. And these are the things we need to work on, and these are the reasons why. And it wasn't just, it's all rubbish.
We do have a strange relationship with change, don't we? And it's kind of, again, it's something that really kind of amazes me, that, but it's a hindsight thing, I think. Like, for example, now you're looking back in hindsight on the week, that looking back in hindsight, that beautiful thing, that it's only been through the periods of change or chaos that the magic stuff has happened, and the most exciting things have happened to come from the biggest periods of adversity, but you never see it at the time. So on Monday morning, when your world was rocked, it felt like change had found you only, and punched you in the face.
Yes.
But as you've come away from it, you start to realize, actually, change happens. It's unavoidable, and it's about changing our relationship with change. And you've got that process in place to do that now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting thinking about change, because I guess the biggest change in everybody's lives was the pandemic, and that was what led to us connecting originally. And it was that whole period that actually really put me in a state of anxiety. And I think I've never noticed that change has done that to me through my life, but I think that was like, we're going to blow everything up all in one go. We're gonna stop you doing all the things that you love. We're gonna stop you going out of your house, even. Because I'm asthmatic, so I was in that you're not allowed to leave your house, and my way of dealing with life is to go out of my house, preferably into some hills, preferably in the middle of nowhere with very few other people, and walk and clear my head in the open air. And all of a sudden somebody was going, no, none of that, can't do that. Can't leave your house at all, can't go and see the hills. All you're going to be able to see is the houses that back onto your garden and the houses that are in front. And I kind of felt like the world was sort of closing in, and got this real claustrophobia almost from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even kind of given the work that I do, I've certainly felt an increase in social anxiety coming away from that point, which for me was an interesting one. It wasn't something really that I struggled with before, even as an introvert naturally. but I certainly have been more aware of since. That my inclination, especially with social things, that my inclination is to go straight to no and then try and talk myself out of it. That's not really a healthy thing to do. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. I mean, you mentioned your relationship with kind of like secondary education, for example, but did you go to college or uni? Did you have any aspiration to do something in particular, or how did that look for you?
Yeah. Sorry, got a bit lost in this story, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought
we
I'd try and bring it back because literally I could talk to you for hours. It would be the longest episode ever. So
probably best not do that. Yeah, I went to uni. I studied maths, statistics, and operational research at where it was called UMIST, so University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. I'm very proud that I got a degree from there because I played hockey for them as well. And there weren't very many years that actually got a UMIS degree. It's now been swallowed up by the University of Manchester. But it was a brilliant place to be. It brought me to Manchester, and I never went home again. Or haven't gone home yet. There is plans to return to Derbyshire at some point.
Okay.
Back to the hills for me at some point. But yeah, did that. Didn't do very well.
I've got an Iron Maiden t-shirt on with one of their tracks being "Run to the Hills." That should be your walk-on music, I reckon.
Yeah, it's not though. Yeah, so didn't do very well. Worked really hard in my first year and my second year, and then in my third year started having fun. Did uni completely the wrong way around. My third year had a job in a pub. Started going clubbing. It was Hacienda, so it was the 90s. It was like mid-90s. Yeah. So it was like Hacienda, Home, Sankey's Soap. These were all like big clubs in Manchester. Dance music was massive.
I remember it well.
Oasis,
good times.
Yeah, Oasis was starting to be big. They actually came into the bar that I worked in on the day that Manchester City beat Manchester United 5-0. And they were in the bar that I was working in. I served Liam and he was not particularly polite. But anyway. Yeah, great times. So
doesn't surprise me for some reason. But
no, my third year was amazing. I had an absolute ball, but didn't do brilliantly in my degree as a result. Then I went, this is probably something you don't know about me. I then started working in pubs and I managed pubs for about 5 years. Which I loved. It's not conducive to a relationship, but really, really good fun. So yeah, I love that. It's great training ground for working in any people type of role.
Absolutely. I found that as well. I've said that quite a lot, that dealing with even conflict resolution, the day-to-day running of finances, people management, that kind of stuff. I worked for Green King Pub Management. Who did you work for?
Bass.
Did you? Cool.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I love this.
Yeah. 5 years working for Bass. Got into this role of being put as a manager in pubs that have been recently refurbed or recently changed brands within the Bass business. And so I did that. Met my husband, and it was like, this is not great. This is not brilliant for that, because I was working 80 odd hours a week.
Yeah,
you just can't sustain a relationship that way.
So you just open the doors at 11 and then go home at 11. There's nothing around it, and
no chance. Starting work at 8 o'clock in the morning and finishing at midnight, and you're doing that 6 days a week.
Yeah.
It's hard, and you're not spending loads of time sitting chatting with the locals, which would have been quite nice. So yeah, then
what you get out of it is the unexpected.
I guarantee you will find something out about yourself.
I got up and stood and said something, and I would never have done that before.
Find Your Voice Live is our flagship event where we cross the boundaries of personal development, mental health, transformation, and public speaking.
And I just find it a really, really good, safe place to stand up and talk.
So great at firing people up, but in a way that's on our own terms and what works for you.
So I've been invited to a lot of stage talks, a lot of exhibitions, and I felt like I needed to sort of improve on the way I sort of portray myself and come across during these talks.
One of the biggest things I think is the use of storytelling, but also how we can influence people through taking them through a journey of different emotions.
And give my own presentation style, my own speaking style, a little bit of oomph.
It gives you so much more confidence. It shows you that, there is nothing to be worried about. It's just, yeah.
If someone was really on the fence about this, I would just say, what have you actually got to lose?
It's all about getting out of your comfort zone, and this will do it in a very organic and enriched way.
Definitely come to this event.
Yeah, just come.
Just commit to it, just go for it.
Well worth the 3-hour journey for that.
The Trafford Centre opened in Manchester, big event, and I got a job running the jacket potato shop in the Trafford Centre. More stuff you didn't know about me. I make a mean jacket potato.
This is impressive. Worth knowing, actually, if I ever get food.
Yeah, and then we bought a house, and we went to a mortgage advisor and an estate agent, and I kind of went, that's a job I could do. That involves numbers and people. Like, yeah. So I talked to the lady about how she got into it and what qualifications she needs. So took myself off to Stockport College and got the financial planning certificate 1, surrounded by people who were being paid by their employers to be doing this course. And I was like, I don't know what any of these things are. I've never seen any of them or heard any of them before. But I swatted like mad and passed. And then found a job in the paper. This is a long time ago, back in the days when you would look for jobs in the paper. Found a job in the paper for an estate agent as a mortgage advisor, and you just needed this FPC 1. Applied, got the job, and there started my career in financial services.
Wow. And along the way, I've noticed, I didn't know this about you either, associate lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan.
Yeah, so this is quite an interesting story, actually. So as I said, I didn't do brilliantly well in my first degree. And this was a bit of a chip on my shoulder for quite a long time, because I kind of thought, I'm better than that. I'm better than what I came out with. I got a degree, but I kind of was like really sort of disappointed with myself. This is another, area of that perfectionism thing coming in. But I was having a beer with my now colleague Steve at the opening party of their new offices. So they'd bought what used to be a pub, and they turned it into their offices. I'd been invited. I wasn't working with them at the time. I'd been invited to go along as a guest, and me and Steve were chatting, and we were talking a bit about whether I'd go and work with him. And we were talking, I was saying I'd really like to do a master's. So he said, well, if you come and work for us, I'll put you through your master's. So I was like, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. So as is obvious, I took the job and started on the 1st of January or 2nd of January 2015. And by February 2015, I'd started my master's at Manchester Met, and finished it in the December 2015, graduated the following summer, and was invited by Manchester Met to come work as an associate lecturer for them.
Wow. Amazing.
So I did that for a short while. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. All experience, isn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned that this kind of fascinates me because there's a commonality, I think, genuinely in every guest that's gone down a certain path of their past and their present. So you've gone down this road of specializing in divorce.
Sure.
Given the story you shared already, that's been a huge part of your background as well.
Yeah.
Are the two linked, or was it just a kind of a perfect storm of coincidences that's led you down this? Is this more kind of purpose, passion led?
It's not at all coincidence. It's purely it's absolutely designed. Not actually from my own experiences from my parents going through divorce, but actually my own divorce.
Okay, yeah.
I always say that in marriages, or actually most relationships, but certainly marriages, you're a team and you work to the strengths of the team. So what you end up having is one person takes the jobs that are applicable to their skills and the other takes the jobs that are applicable to their skills. So with myself and my ex-husband, he's reasonable at doing the garden. I used to clean the house. When we split up, I was like, I can't, what am I going to do now? So I have someone who comes in and mows my lawn and does my weeding and stuff, because I'm like, not my thing. And the same's true of money. And it's true in almost every relationship that one person will take the lead on the money and they'll look after the finances, they'll sort out the pensions, they'll sort out the mortgages, they'll research the insurances, they'll change bank accounts, they'll generally look after the money. Which is absolutely fine, no problem with that in the majority of cases. There are cases where that is a problem because there's abuse underlying, but generally that's how relationships work. And as long as you have conversations fairly regularly about the money and everybody knows what's going on, it's all good. Apart from when something happens to the person who looks after the money. So either divorce or death, or even serious illness where they're in hospital and can't do anything, because then it leaves the person who hasn't been looking after the money in this extra state of fear. And so when we split up, it became really clear to me quite early on that my ex-husband, because he hadn't had that experience of looking after the money, he was having this extra layer of fear around how to do things. So like I helped him apply for his mortgage after we split up, and he would ask me for pension advice still, which is absolutely fine in our situation. But actually, if it's not a really amicable situation and there isn't that trust still there, it can be really tricky. So I kind of thought, well, actually the work that I do as a financial planner is really relevant in these circumstances. So I went out and looked at how to specialize in this area. As you can imagine, because this is me, did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, went and met with a fantastic guy called Phil O'Connor up in Bolton, who mentored me, which was everything that I needed at that time. And I became, over the course of 3 years, because you have to do quite a lot of CPD and get immersed in the world of divorce. And then you can apply to be accredited by Resolution, which is, despite having my master's, Resolution accreditation is the hardest thing I have ever undertaken in my life.
Wow.
But it's also the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, you mentioned the pandemic and its effect on kind of our personal selves in that sense. Is it changed that's when it comes to divorce or separation?
I don't think it has.
Okay.
It's really difficult because there's a load of underlying things that have been happening in the divorce world that have changed the statistics.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
When you look at the newspapers, they would tell you more people are getting divorced now than before.
Mm-hmm.
They will tell you all about how more people were getting divorced straight after the pandemic. But these statistics are really difficult because in the divorce world, we've also had this big change called no fault divorce. So a few years ago, if you were going to get divorced, what you would have to do is you'd have to either be separated for 2 years and both agree that you would get divorced, separated for 5 years and it didn't matter whether you agreed or not, be deserted, accuse the other person of adultery, or accuse the other person of something else that classed enough that the court would believe that it was irretrievable.
Yeah.
And that's quite hard. And that leads, because that's the first stage of divorce. So let's say you and me are married and I go, right, well, we need to get divorced because you've done this, and it's all written down and sent to you in a form, and you read it and you go, I don't do that. And everyone's on the back foot from day one. So even if you're trying to have an amicable divorce, everybody's on the back foot. So thankfully, the law changed a couple of years ago. And we're now in this situation of no fault divorce. But it was coming for quite a long time. So during the pandemic, this no fault divorce was coming. So actually what happened was lots of people waited.
Held off.
For it to become law. And then lots of people who hadn't applied before applied. So you got...
I see.
So you suddenly got this huge hike in... I mean, it's a great story, isn't it? You know, it's great. It's good media. It's good journalism. It's good to put in the papers.
That's the things that sells.
Yeah, sells newspapers. But the reality of it is that I don't believe that's what led the increase in the divorce rate. I think it's because people were waiting for no fault divorce.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean,
and it also takes a long time to get divorced. You know, you don't go, right, I've decided we're getting divorced, and the day after you file online, that's not what happens. It takes ages because people have got to get their heads around it. They've got to think about how things are going to work. They've got to research the whole, there's loads. It takes time. It can take, you know, I've spoken to people the day after they've had the conversation. There's still nothing happens for 6 months. You know, it's even in the shortest cases, it's still quite a long time. So yeah, there's not that. It's not that, oh, we've lived together and driven each other mad during the pandemic, so we're all going to get divorced. It's like that's not.
That's kind of how they made it seem, wasn't it? That was the thing. Yeah. I guess when I've spoken to kind of counsellors on the show before, therapists, they have this kind of thing called supervision, where if a client's challenges or adversity is really close to their own, they need to be very mindful of actually that kind of crossover. Now, you're absolutely working in a space where you have a couple of really strong personal connections, these things. That must take your energy. How do you protect yourself, and what do you do to recharge away from working life?
Yeah, it does. And supervision is absolutely brilliant. It's interesting you brought it up because it's something that I only heard about in the last sort of 12 months, and did work with a supervisor for a little while. I have fairly regular hypnotherapy sessions, which is something that I discovered during the pandemic. I had I'm going to call it a breakdown. I had a point in time where I couldn't function. I think the only thing that I did was speak to Steve and speak to you. I was very grateful to Steve for introducing me to you because it was absolutely what I needed. But the other thing that I started doing was having hypnotherapy, and it's something that I kind of pick up and I was going to say pick up and drop. That's the wrong phrase, really, but I think I need it on a regular basis, even though my brain sometimes tells me that I don't. So I'll stop going and I'll be like, oh no, I'm all right now, and then the world happens and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna come and see you again. So that massively helps me, and I know different types of therapy helps different people. That's what I found that works for me. Talking therapy absolutely doesn't work for me.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm one of those people. So I had some talking therapy with a guy, and I ended up feeling like I was the one listening to the therapist's problems. I was like,
Start charging him by the hour if you want a truly relationship.
It was a bit like that. It was like, I think I'm paying you for this. It feels a bit wrong. So I kind of stopped that. The other things I do to keep myself sane are walking in the hills we've talked about.
Yes.
I do that as often as I possibly can. I do CrossFit. I don't look like a CrossFitter, I know. Thing about CrossFit, and I know there's loads of jokes about CrossFit, and it's like veganism, isn't it? It's a bit of a cult thing. I just love it. It's you don't have to be brilliant, you don't have to be strong, you don't have to be fit, you don't have to be anything. You can, but it's one of the most supportive communities that I've ever been involved in.
Interesting.
People in our gym are fantastic. It's small groups, it's small classes. The coaches know what you're capable of and will push you as far as you can be pushed. I fractured my ankle about 6 weeks ago, and all the advice was like, don't do anything for 6 weeks. 2 weeks I was back at the CrossFit gym, and I was like, look, I'm just going to come in, just rehab here. Is that all right? They were like, yeah, that's fine. Just do what you can do and don't do what you can't do. So you kind of exercising the bits of your body that still work and not the bits that don't. So it's all good. So that again that's good for my mental health. I try and eat reasonably healthily. Reasonably within boundaries of not really.
Yeah. What's next for Tamsin Caine?
Who knows? I don't know.
I'm with you on that. I think that I'm genuinely pretty much winging it year to year. I think it takes you in ways that you don't imagine it to take you. So yeah, I'm awful to coach because I can't come up with that. Oh, what do you want for 5 years kind of thing? But so is there any kind of big outrageous goal that you want to achieve that's on the horizon, or?
No, there's a move. There's definitely a house move back to the countryside. My kids are nearly 20 and 18. My son is currently interrailing in Europe, and I am so jealous. I can't even tell you. Have you been watching Celebrity Race Across the World?
No, I've only seen little bits on Gogglebox.
It's so amazing. It's so brilliant. Anyway, last night I watched episode 5, and they went to every single place that every team went to. My son's been to in the last few weeks. So I was like going, that place looks fantastic. That place looks fantastic. And I'm messaging him going, you won't believe this. They're in XYZ place. So very, I know, I'm super proud of him because he's kind of organised it all himself. I've had nothing to do with it. He's just taken himself off. But I am he's back in a week, and I am counting the days. Can't wait till he comes back. But yeah, super proud. But yeah, I'd like to do a lot more traveling. Don't feel like I've done enough of that. But yeah, other than that, just kind of onwards and upwards. I get some fantastic opportunities to do things that I never thought I would do. So speaking at conferences, I'm not brilliant at stuff like that, but I'm getting there.
Tamsin is brilliant at doing this. I've seen her speak. So Tamsin actually came to, she's sure hide a light under this bushel. I've seen Tamsin speak multiple times when she came to my Find Your Voice conference, and she was exceptional. And I told her that I wish you saw what I see in you, and she went.
No,
you are absolutely, you are a great speaker, genuinely.
That's very sweet of you to say. I think, things like that. I've written over the last few years. I've co-written a book. I host a podcast. I've had the opportunity to speak at numerous conferences, including like a lot of legal conferences, because obviously my work involved in divorce, I've had the opportunity. So I was speaking at a legal conference in Nottingham last week with a couple of other people on the subject of financial abuse, just developing my knowledge and awareness of things like that. And I think for me that's going to be a route that I would like to follow more and find out more about and see how I can help. I'm very strong into helping people. The reason I came into financial planning was actually to help people. For me, our work it's not necessarily about helping rich people get richer. It's about helping people to enrich their own lives and to live the best life they possibly can. And whilst the work in divorce might seem contrary to that, actually, divorce it's the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. And it's a point at which you are able to pause, take stock, and really think about what you want from your next chapter of your life. And you can design it yourself. And the thing about divorce is you then don't have to compromise for what somebody else wants, because it's just about you. So you're designing your new life just for you. And to see the people that I work with, I kind of always say that divorce is a bit like a caterpillar in a chrysalis. And that chrysalis lasts probably a year or two after divorce. But then you see our clients kind of start to break through that chrysalis and grow wings and become this amazing butterfly. And you see them start to achieve some incredible things in their lives and start to do some of the things that they've talked about wanting to do. And it's a really beautiful thing to be able to watch, and it's a real privilege to be part of their lives in that way.
Wow, I love that. The fact you're actually doing that for that kind of very purposeful kind of mission, but also you are positioning yourself as a key person of influence in your field. I think it's a powerful thing because you've got the combination of both things there. You've got the purpose and the passion and the education, but you've also got that platform that you're now being given to kind of share that. I think it's brilliant. So
thank you.
Let's fast forward about 10 years where actually you've got like a sellout crowd at O2 Arena. I'm now the MC. I'm announcing you to the stage. You're sat back in the green room. I call your name. Your crowd go absolutely wild and your walk-on music kicks in. That song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. Tamsin Caine, what music would you walk on to?
So there's only one, isn't there? It's got to be Queen, Don't Stop Me Now.
What a tune. So that every other choice from season 7 will be available on the playlist at the end of the season, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, Tamsin Caine, give it up. Amazing guest. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Where can people find you, Tamsin?
Thank you for having me. They can find me absolutely everywhere. So I am on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I've got a podcast, the Smart Divorce podcast, that I'd love you to check out if you're going through separation or divorce of any description. There's so much valuable content from so many amazing people on there.
Amazing. I know Tamsin would be delighted to hear from anybody that wants to reach out. So all of those links and the contact details are going to be in the bio, so please do look her up. And yeah, thank you again, Tamsin. Really appreciate your time. But for now, hit like, subscribe. You know, I'm not a details guy. Whatever it takes to get you back here next Monday, do that thing. But for now, have a great week ahead. Take care. Be happy. See you later, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.